There is a big issue with the way the FIA and the F1 stewards hand out penalties, and the last race at Miami is case in point. Let me introduce Thanos, aka Kevin Magnussen. He was on a quest to collect all of the F1 penalties he could, and you'd better believe he succeeded. Magnussen started his hunt for the FIA penalty Infinity Stones when he was defending against Lewis Hamilton during the 19-lap sprint race on Saturday. Ahead of Magnussen was his teammate Hulkenberg, and he knew that if Hamilton got past him, he'd likely get past Hulkenberg as well. Because of this, and not for the first time this season, Magnussen made sure he was going to use every trick in the book and every piece of tarmac to stop that from happening. Most of his moves involved braking so late for turn 11 that neither driver could take the corner, or driving straight at the turn 14 chicane to keep ahead and enough that when DRS was activated down the next straight, Hamilton couldn't get past. He was given three separate 10-second penalties for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, and then a further 5-second penalty for leaving the track without a justifiable reason. That's a total of 35 seconds worth of penalties in a 19-lap race. The problem, and we're going to talk about this more in a little bit, was that his race was really over once he got the first 10-second penalty, because it was unlikely that he would remain in the points or be able to get back into the points in such a short race. After that, he's just carrying on because he has nothing else to lose. He was also given 3 penalty points against his racing license for the incidents, and he was then called into the steward's office after making some comments after the race. This is what he said. "All the penalties were deserved, no doubt about it, but I had to play the team game again. I started using these stupid tactics, which I don't like doing, but at the end of the day, I did my job as a team player, and Nico scored his points because I got that gap for him, so Lewis and Tsunoda couldn't catch him. Not the way I like to go racing at all, but it's what I had to do." These comments led the stewards to invite him for a little chat in regards to unsportsmanlike behaviour. They invited him, they had a discussion, then they made their decision. Now, I'm not going to read the whole statement from the FIA, but they did say that the bar for unsportsmanlike behaviour must be high, and that while they disagree with the way that Kevin Magnussen was driving, they don't think it reached unsportsmanlike behaviour. They did, however, say something very interesting. This is what they said. "Having said that, moving forward, the stewards will need to consider if, in appropriate situations, especially in the case of repeat infringements, the penalties to be applied for each infringement need to be increased to discourage scenarios such as those we found today. This is something that we will raise explicitly with the FIA and the stewarding team." Of course, the next day, Kevin Magnussen was in more trouble. This time, not so much for defending, but for attacking. He sent it down the inside of Logan Sargeant into turn 3. The gap was never really there. He did have more speed than Sargeant. The gap wasn't there. It's a very, very tight corner that leads into a swooping section. Sargeant ended up in the barriers, and that brought out the safety car. He was given a 10-second penalty for that collision by the stewards, then believing he was wholly responsible. And then, weirdly, he got a separate 20-second penalty for entering the pits during the safety car and not changing his tyres. That's a new one for me. As well as that, he was given another 2 penalty points on his licence for the collision, taking him to a total of 10 now, with a maximum allowed of 12. If he reaches 12, he's going to get a race ban, and he would be the first driver to reach that threshold since the system was introduced back in 2014. Wow. You may remember Jeddah a few races ago when Magnussen caused a roadblock with 30 seconds of penalties, so his teammate, again, Hulkenberg, could build a gap to pit and come out ahead. This is something K-Mag's done before to good effect, and the FIA are now realising that one penalty after another isn't quite doing the job. Before we get onto the penalty system though, I just want to point out another interesting comment from Carlos Sainz this time, when he was asked about his incident with Oscar Piastri. Sainz was getting incredibly frustrated behind Piastri when he sent it into turn 17. He lost control a little bit, locked the rears, his rear tyre made contact with the front of the McLaren, essentially ruined the Australian's race because he sadly then had to pit for a new front wing. When speaking to Sky Sports, Sainz said this: "Frustrated, obviously, with Oscar, because he nearly pushed us off track and cost us to lose time with Charles and Max in front. I saw that the stewards weren't being very aggressive with penalties today, and I had to be aggressive too." Now, he referenced Piastri pushing him wide and off the track down at turn 11, which for the record, I do think deserved something. This is the way now that Formula One drivers drive. Kevin Magnussen did the same with Lewis Hamilton, because it's been allowed over the years. It started with Max Verstappen back in 2021, really, maybe before, but certainly came to the forefront in 2021 when Max simply just wouldn't make a corner, push another driver off, and the stewards didn't do anything about it. Lots of drivers do it now. It's not just Max, it's not just K-Mag. Most drivers do it. They push cars to the edge of the track and they get away with it. Sainz obviously felt a little bit aggrieved by that. The issue here, though, is that Kevin Magnussen, and I don't mean him as a driver, this isn't really about him specifically, although what he did at Miami is just a really, really good case study. It's about drivers getting penalties that don't matter and the consequences of that. What is the consequence of a driver repeatedly getting, say, 3 10-second penalties like K-Mag for the same thing, by the way? They know their race is over, in the instance of Kevin Magnussen, after the first penalty. So why would they care if they got another one, or another one, or another one? They wouldn't. At that point, their race is already over. They don't care. For K-Mag, it was far more important to not say ruin Hamilton's race, but keep Hamilton behind, or anyone else behind for that matter, than his own race, because he was protecting his teammate. Some of you will say that's exciting, okay? You'll say, well, K-Mag was the most entertaining thing about the sprint. And I would say to that, if you think that, it's just because the rest of the race was sadly boring. What Magnussen was doing was definitely over the top. And before you say it wasn't, he admitted as much. He didn't want to be doing that sort of thing. He knew what he was doing and he knew it was wrong. If the rest of the competition was there in that sprint race, for example, people wouldn't need that sort of reckless driving to enjoy the Grand Prix and to enjoy the spectacle. Ultimately, if a driver is getting a 10-second penalty, perhaps we need to bring back another system if they get a repeat offence. We need something else to deter drivers from repeatedly getting penalties. Kevin Magnussen didn't care if he got that first 10-second penalty. And once he did, he certainly didn't care about getting another one. What we need is something that takes them out of position on the track, that ultimately takes away what they're trying to achieve. Now, we used to get a lot of drive-through penalties. We don't really get those anymore. Maybe that's something that we need to look at, especially for a second 10-second penalty, if the stewards deem not only is it for the same thing, but there is a pattern in the way that they're driving or the way that they're defending. There has to maybe be a little bit of a change to the way that the stewards can operate there to make that effective change. The other option is for repeat offenders in the same race. Is it possible that they should be penalised for the following race? What the FIA like to do for the most part with penalties inside the race is keep them within that race. And I completely understand that. And it gets confusing for people if people are penalised between races. So I understand that. But it would be a surefire way to make sure that drivers behave. If you give Kevin Magnussen a 10-second penalty and you say, carry on, you're going to get another one for the next race, all of a sudden, he's going to change the way he drives because he might be out of luck on this race, but he doesn't know how the next race is going to be and he doesn't want a penalty for that. I'm not sure that is the solution, but we need to maybe start bringing back black flags, drive-through penalties, stop-go penalties. Something needs to be done for repeat offenders. I'm not sure what the FIA will do, but Kevin Magnussen's going to have to be a lot more careful. He's just picked up 5 penalty points in one weekend and one more incident, really, for the rest of the season, and he could be the first driver to receive a one-race ban, and that would be pretty embarrassing. Either way, this whole situation has opened up a bit of a can of worms with the system that we currently have, and I'm interested to hear really what you think and what the solutions are from your point of view. So let me know in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, all the rest of it, and I'll see you next time.